David is unapologetically challenging the protein bar market staleness. And unless you are a completely unhinged stan of my content, which I'm going to assume there isn't a single human roaming Earth fitting that description, you likely didn't recognize that introductory statement as the exact title from my previous content piece focused on the functional nutrition brand. And while it's not absolutely imperative you check out, if you haven't already, that September 2024 conversational content piece with David co-founder and CEO Peter Rahal in chronological order, it certainly provides an enormous level of contextually relevant insights that will be valuable when trying to better understand the David growth story. But regardless, jumping into the inspiration for this current content, it was just announced that David closed a $75 million Series A fundraising round, valuing the 8-month-old startup at $725 million. And I didn't make a mistake either. Launched, if I remember correctly, the exact same day as my previous content went live, David's current valuation has already surpassed the first Peter Rahal exit, which involved Kellogg's acquiring RXBAR for $600 million in 2017. And though that's insanely impressive, I'm still not typically someone that amplifies the countless categorical fundraising news because, in all honesty, those business stories are largely bullshit puffery. And I can make those types of statements because while I'm not yet one of those industry old heads that I oftentimes make jokes about, I've devoted the last 15 plus years to obsessing over every aspect of the emerging and intersecting CPG categories of functional foods, functional beverages, and nutritional supplements. And that deep domain expertise has provided me with, humbly speaking, of course, an unmatched level of clarity that can build strong conviction around non-consensus market moving trends. Also, I put my track record against anyone when it comes to separating out the key market signals from the immense amount of noise. So then, why talk about this David fundraising news? A strong amount of supporting retail and distribution numbers were provided, and the inclusion of a few commercial strategy updates will make for some insightful consumer behavior dissection. Also, there's a vertical integration component that I believe is worth talking about more deeply. But let's start there on the supply side, as David will obviously use the investment to scale manufacturing, accelerate product development, and expand inventory to meet surging demand. Moreover, in an effort to strengthen its ability to scale, David acquired Epogee, the food technology firm behind Epogee, a plant-based fat alternative that significantly reduces calories and fat without compromising taste or texture. And at first glance, it might seem like an odd use of capital to acquire an ingredient supplier, but let me explain the beauty of this investment decision. Within extremely competitive, low barriers to entry CPG categories like protein bars, products can have a mostly sea of sameness composition, yet differentiation within the protein bar market can at times be derived from having a unique form factor. And to go one step further, if that unique form factor becomes popular, a competitive advantage can be created through defensibility if you own the manufacturing process. Now, in terms of the current protein bars offered by David, the form factor is not unique. But what David does possess is a level of uniqueness around certain ingredients utilized within the current protein bars, like EPG. And I'm sure some industry pundits or so-called MAHA nutrition experts will cry that EPG is a step backwards towards the fat-free craze of my 90s youth. And you're entitled to your own opinion, but honestly, keep it to yourself, because I'm a business-minded simpleton admiring the beautiful strategic alignment between protein bar consumers wanting a protein-to-calorie ratio, like leading ready-to-mix and RTD protein shakes, and David gaining exclusive control over an important supply chain element, making that possible. And because it will be inevitable that the brand's surging demand and popularity will trigger the follower mentality that plagues these extremely competitive, low barriers to entry CPG categories like protein bars, possessing ingredient exclusivity around that critical, not easily substitutable component will largely eliminate copycat competitor risk over the near term. Additionally, this type of follower mentality within marketplaces can be problematic for another reason, as it leads to a scenario where copycats understand the what, but not the why behind strategic decisions, even though all of the value generated from distinctiveness lives inside the why. As an example, Peter Rahal recently stated that the company mission is to design tools that increase muscle and decrease fat, giving it permission to go into other places. And I want you to take a few seconds to think through the why behind his statement, because you'll then fully realize David isn't just another protein bar brand. It's a food technology company focused on building tools that make it easier for consumers to eat well without compromise. And I believe acquiring the patent holder of Epogee provides David with a lot of strategic optionality. Simply put, since David now controls the flow of supply, it can obviously choose to utilize all current or new capacity for its protein bars, utilize excess current or future capacity for developing new products or new brands, or supply current and future vendor needs. And that decision could change based on one, if David protein bars continue to perform exceptionally well in the market, and two, if supply capacity and the optimal supply efficiency level grows beyond short-term or long-term needs. Moreover, within the scenario modeling of this M&A transaction, there was probably an icing on the cake setup that could occur if continued surging demand for David protein bars push the adoption curve forward in such a way that the plant-based fat alternative gets mainstream acceptance. And that would then push Big CPG to consider Epg within renovation type development projects of mega popular products, thus creating a fats version of the massive artificial sweetener market. Eventually, it results in David possessing a massively valuable subsidiary that creates more levels of powerful strategic optionality. But right now, all that future of Epg and its larger food industry impact stuff shouldn't be taking up a ton of mindshare. Instead, Peter Rahal needs to be laser focused on making David the #1 protein bar in the category. So let's talk about the progress David has made around that pursuit in its first 8 months of commercial operations. According to the company, it's on pace to surpass $100 million, with a few reports stating upwards of $140 million in sales profitably in its first year of operation. And most of that commercial activity has been done across the various digital channels, from direct-to-consumer and Amazon to social commerce like TikTok Shop. Also, David had initially executed on a fairly simple offline distribution strategy focusing on retailers or sales channels that clearly demonstrate protein-dominant products have the highest velocity relative to the categorical benchmark. This was the primary reason that I connected David with the Vitamin Shoppe pre-launch, which I believe was its first national retailer. Since then, David has expanded to over 3,000 US retail locations, including the East Coast grocery chain Wegmans, and recently became available in Canada. But now, with a substantial level of fresh capital and obvious product market fit, it wouldn't surprise me if David started slowly expanding into retailers and sales channels where protein-dominant products have struggled relative to the categorical benchmark. But I just wanted to end with some quick final thoughts. When we look at the future of David, it will undoubtedly include horizontal product expansion. And I could pontificate about those likely new product innovations, bringing attention to the other David co-founder's CPG background, or even how the other RXBAR co-founder launched a protein chocolate bar also leveraging Epg. But I want to take this in a different direction. There was a moment during our previous conversational content that I thought was worth mentioning again, when Peter Rahal started talking about his time spent as a venture capitalist. But within an interview from 2023, when Humble Growth closed a $312 million growth equity fund for disruptive CPG brands, Peter Rahal mentions how that investment firm wouldn't focus on this area, but he finds many developments in alternative proteins and cellular agriculture super interesting. And with the Epogee transaction under its belt, David will more than likely acquire more food technology companies that are critical components powering these tools designed to increase muscle and decrease fat. But I hope you enjoyed the first principles thinking that went into my latest YouTube video. If you did, can you do me a favor by hitting that like button? That quick and free action helps YouTube know my content is worth spreading to more people. Also, we're getting really close to reaching my next subscriber goal, and it would be great if you join me on this journey. But to do that, we need to fix the fact that slightly more than 3/4 of you that are watching this video right now are not subscribed to my YouTube channel, and that hurts my feelings. Regardless, I want to thank you for giving me some of your attention and time, and I'll see you on the next one.